Several years ago, a group of men from Ephesus Baptist Church, including yours truly, traveled to West Virginia to whitewater raft the Lower Gauley River. Well, before we got in our two rafts, there were 12 of us. The guide warned us about several places along the river that were very dangerous. The water would carry you under rocks and trap you if you found yourselves in the river. And so, sure enough, as we approached that first set of rapids, hadn't been in the river more than 5 minutes, somehow both of our rafts capsized, tossing all 12 of us into the water. And we panicked. All of us were struggling, not sure if we would be forced under that rock and be trapped. So we fought it with all our might to get to shore, to get to a nearby raft to be fished out. 2 or 3 of us were underwater for an extended period of time, and I know it really impacted them. It was a scary, scary trip. Thank God that we all made it to safety. But it was definitely a time of tribulation. And it reminds me that Jesus talks about a time of tribulation in Matthew chapter 24. And I read from the word of the Lord. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you'll be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets, many false preachers will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Now that's not a very uplifting passage, is it? And yet it is, in a way, encouraging. Why? Because like that guide on the Lower Gauley River all those years ago, I'm glad he warned us what to expect. I mean, if he had not, and we had ended up in that raging torrent of river, 38,000 cubic feet of water per second, you can't fight that. Well, we might have lost someone that day. His warning helped us be on guard and to be ready. Well, Jesus is trying to do the same thing for his followers, to prepare his followers for some rough waters in the future. In fact, he says in verse 25, "See, I have told you ahead of time." Jesus is talking about events that will happen in the near future, as well as things that will happen in the distant future from their perspective. Old Testament prophets did this all the time. Now, an event or events that are to happen soon are a signal to further and even more complete fulfillment of those events later in time, maybe in the far distant future. Chuck Swindoll calls this the law of double fulfillment. There are other names for it. But in this passage, Jesus is doing that. He mingles together the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, soon to happen, and matters that concern the end of the world, which is obviously still even in our future. Events far removed in time and events in the near future are spoken of as if they were close together in time, like those interstate signs I talked about last time. Well, the destruction of the temple will happen just as Jesus predicted only 40 years after he spoke these words. Some who were there with Jesus, hearing him, were still alive at that time. But since Jesus also talks about things that can only happen at the end of the world, far distant in time for his listeners, could he be teaching that the destruction of the temple in 70 AD is a type or a foreshadowing of the awful things that will happen near the end of the world? I believe so. Jesus is saying that times of trouble and persecution and tribulation will characterize the entire time between his first and second comings. God's people will suffer tribulation and be under pressure in every age until he returns. In fact, he said in John 16:33, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, The same word, tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. When will the final intensified form of this tribulation occur? It may be that for some Christians living in other parts of the world, the Great Tribulation has already begun. America is not there yet, but there certainly is a rising tide of hostility against Christianity and against Christians, even in the U.S. right now. Well, that sign should put us all on guard. Is our faith strong enough to withstand such tribulation? Remember Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 24, assure us that God is the source and will provide all spiritual resources we need to be able to stand strong no matter what, even in difficult times, in times of tribulation. Well, next week, I want us to take a look at some more verses from Matthew 24, verses 15 through 25, and I will ask the question, can Christians expect to be raptured or to escape the worst time of tribulation? Think about that, and let's talk about that next time. For now, I want to leave us with a song that you know so well, Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me, His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first